401k advisors want to build a scalable practice, but aren't always sure what to do next. Welcome to Outcomes, the podcast designed to help advisors think, make decisions, and cast a vision to create a business for the future. Here's your host, Ross Marino, financial planner, author, speaker, and CEO of Advisor 2X.
Welcome to Outcomes, the podcast. Today, I am joined by Mario Giganti, Senior VP with CAPTRUST. Welcome, Mario.
Thanks, Ross. Glad to be here.
Let's go back to not quite the beginning of your career, but I do want to start with some history. You've made quite a few changes recently, and it really adds to your perspective on the industry. But I think we have to know your journey a little bit.
Sure.
Recently, or within the last couple of years, you teamed up with CAPTRUST. Can you take us through your career up until the point when you joined CAPTRUST?
Absolutely. And again, it's always interesting to find out where people started and where they are today and where they're going in the future, right? So I'll give you the journey from two perspectives. The first one I'll make really quick, and that's from an athletic perspective. I was a soccer player at a small school. Actually, was an All-American, and both academic and athletic. And it taught me a lot about winning, teamwork, how to push through, how to set goals. I worked with a lot of great people in order to get there. And that process, along with learning how to coach, and I've been coaching youth soccer, usually high school and college level kids since 1992, I think, and still do that. I have a professional license to coach, and I just love and enjoy doing it. So that was something that propelled me from an academic perspective as well as into the career perspective. And I started as a CPA, an accountant, doing auditing work, believe it or not. And that's how people started back then. I got a job with Ernst & Young prior to I even took finals my fall semester. So I had it all laid out, right? I knew what I was going to do. I thought I always wanted to be a CEO, president of a company, but that's how I was starting. I was good at, I found out later that I was really good at accounting, but it didn't drive me. It wasn't exciting. I was good at it, but it wasn't what I'd like to do if nobody was paying me. That was more coaching, leading, teaching, etc. And so right around the second, third year, Ernst & Young, the personal financial counseling group was growing. And I said, wow, I can help people make money on their investments and save money on taxes. And there I went. So I stayed at Ernst & Young for about 4.5 years. I then went over to 2 brokerage firms. I won't name them by names. Learned a lot about the product side, learned a lot about what I didn't want to do. And then back in 2002, I joined, actually it was the beginning of 2000. Well, let me think back. Yes, at the beginning of 2002, I joined Cornerstone Capital Advisors, brought clients with me, started their 401k business from scratch. Back then, RIAs didn't work in the 401k business, but I understood revenue sharing and how it worked. And I basically either collected the revenue sharing or put clients in institutional funds, saved them money by having a great due diligence process that I learned from FI 360 and an investment policy statement. I did that for about 6 or 7 years, built that business up. And then I hired some people to run that business, came back over to the wealth side and started helping build up our wealth side. And so, back in 2009, just to give you an example, I think we were, we had about 80 million in assets under advisement. When we merged with CAPTRUST, we were about 700 million 10 years later. So we went from about 9 employees to 20 at the time. So on May 1st of 2019, we collectively decided for so many reasons that we had finally found a partner that we were extremely confident in and decided to become part of CAPTRUST. I think we were the 43rd office. I think we're close to 60 now. Again, we went from roughly about 700 million in assets under advisement and locally to just under $1 billion today so far.
I love that you brought up college and team sports and coaching and what you learned. I have a good friend who is from India. He's a physician. He is adamant that the difference between America and so many other countries is that our kids grow up many of them playing team sports and learning how to interact with each other and be coached and have disappointment and conflict, and really pitches a strong case that that's a deal breaker for learning
Sure.
to do business and to grow. And I've
Absolutely.
certainly seen it just with my kids going through team sports, and I grew up in sports as well. You get experiences that people who aren't in sports or some type of competitive group environment just don't have. It's definitely a game changer.
Sure.
So you built a big practice, had a lot of people working with you. You're up to 20 people, big 401k practice, doing some wealth management as well. You join CAPTRUST, and then all of a sudden there's a big switcheroo. What happened?
Absolutely. So again, let me preface that by saying that the business itself was about 70 wealth, 30 retirement plan. And what we had been able to do is build bridges between the businesses. So they really worked well with each other, and clients cross-pollinated. I was the only one that did that. The rest of my colleagues were all wealth management. So again, while it was 70-30, I might have been one time 30-70, 50-50. A few years back, I hired somebody to officially run that business as a dedicated employee. And again, I still dealt with a lot of the clients and still dealt with all the wealth clients that had retirement plans. So part of the planning process as we were going through the final due diligence working with CAPTRUST is that the gentleman who runs our Akron office, Steve Wilt, is a 401k guru. And he's been that way for 30 years. And he was a former colleague of mine. He stayed a collegial friend, competitor throughout the years. And I was extremely confident in Steve's ability to do what he can do. And so we agreed that I didn't want to come back into the retirement business at any point in time in the future full time, and that it was best if I had him as the backup plan and vice versa. So, Steve actually moved all his wealth business over to us in the Akron office, or excuse me, the Green office. We moved, probably about 70% of our retirement business to his office, mainly investment committee type plans. I still work with 3 of them, actually. Plan to do so at least for the foreseeable future. And I work with the majority of our wealth clients that have retirement plans, where roughly 80% of the money in the plan is in the business owner's accounts. So it's part of the personal financial planning process, that personal CFO service that we offer.
So many people grow their practices, myself included, by adding services or acquiring other practices or merging, doing partnerships. There's a path of growth that seems like kind of a straight line, maybe some horizontal expansion, but it's generally the same direction. But you completely split. And when I heard you say how you transferred all this business or most of it one place, and then he transferred it to your office, I thought that just takes a lot of guts. I mean, I understand conviction, but just to say we're going to change our business model after so many years, that sounds a little scary, Mario.
It actually wasn't, believe it or not. It was part of the plan. I had built an expertise and still have an expertise through the fiduciary work that I do with FI 360. So I think that I can battle just about anybody in terms of fiduciary process. But when it came down to blocking and tackling, Steve knew CAPTRUST system well. CAPTRUST system is phenomenal on the retirement plan side. And I felt like our clients ultimately would be better served by having somebody 100% dedicated to that side of the business. And he felt the same way on the wealth side. In fact, probably more so in terms of what we do. And once he really understood what our personal financial planning process, our personal CFO role was, he was enamored by it. And I've taught that to many other CAPTRUST advisors throughout the country, just how we go about discussing our services with prospective clients, how we walk them through an introduction experience, and then what the wealth management process looks like from there. So it was, as hard as it sounds, when you know where you're going, it's a lot easier. I don't have to own everything. I just want to have a part in everything. And I want to do what I'm uniquely good at. And I also like the ideas of having some time and space as well. And this allows me to accomplish everything, but knowing my clients are taken care of, which is the most important thing.
I think the personal CFO is a concept that is not as widespread as it should be. And as you become more successful, and these are going to be your clients who are business owners, the complexity of their lives increases, but also the mental demands.
Sure.
They just don't have the capacity to take care of this. And I've experienced it myself. Our CFO is my personal CFO. He handles lots of stuff for me. I trust him as much as anybody in the world. And it's a wonderful benefit. And if I wouldn't have experienced it myself, I'm not sure I would have really understood how powerful that is. So I think that's a market on the wealth side that I remember seeing the first website, a guy I know in town who was the personal CFO. And I thought, oh, that's clever. Did not get it.
Sure.
Did not get it at all. He was spot on. They've got a huge practice, just didn't register. I just wasn't in that world enough at the time.
Sure.
But I think it's important. But really, let's go to the wealth side. I mean, you've got the right partner. You see where you want to go. You have the convictions. But why focus on wealth for the next 5-10 years instead of 401ks?
So again, I think the company is focused on both, as well as the endowment foundation marketplace. And so it's a great cross-pollination of business. So our office in particular is set up to be ninjas, if you want to call it, on the personal wealth side. And with what Steve's office is doing in Akron, they are using our younger CFPs and even some of our seasoned CFPs to do all the one-on-one meetings that they're doing with their employees. They're positioning us as the wealth experts inside of those retirement plans. So you can have your cake and eat it too, essentially. I don't have to be the one driving the 401k business per se. I don't have to be the one servicing the 401k side of the business, yet we reap all the benefits from the wealth side as if we were. And that's the power of the synergistic relationships that CAPTRUST is trying to build amongst specialists in the wealth side versus the 401k side. And it's something that's going to drive a tremendous amount of organic growth over the course of the next 5 or 10 years. So I don't have to worry about that in the world.
Well, I love the sound of a personal wealth ninja. Can you give me an example or a definition of what that means? Because it just sounds great. I want to be one, whatever it is. I want to be a personal wealth ninja.
So for what it's worth, our Akron office head, that's what he says, is that you don't want me, you want our wealth ninjas down in green. So again, I think that that personal CFO concept really is what matters, and that there's a lot of fluff around that. What does it really mean? You actually have to do the work. You have to know who the outside experts are and when to bring them in. You're sitting at the same table. I almost feel like I'm the CFO of their family stewardship, so to speak. So we're making sure on an annual basis that everything gets done that needs to get done in terms of making smart financial decisions. And then at the end of the day, we're trying to minimize taxes, working either internally or externally with advisors, making sure that their heirs are provided, they can take care of the people they love and the causes they care about, and that's front and center. And then also making sure that assets aren't unjustly taken, that all the risk management or asset management type scenarios are all set up, whether it's beneficiary designations, the title of accounts, working with the outside experts to get their opinion as well, challenge the outside experts when it doesn't make sense in a professional way. But I think at the end of the day, it's just we know their net worth, we know their cash flow, we know what their goals are. We're constantly working with them to see if there's any changes that need to happen, focused on, again, are they financially independent? Are they taking care of the people they love and then the causes they care about? And that's what we do. That's a ninja.
So you're plugged into their finances, their net worth, their income. You're connected on that level. But I know you go much deeper. You understand there's two sides to financial planning. From my perspective, I call it the financial side and the human side. They're like two sides of a coin. One does not exist without the other. Both are equally important. You're also motivated in that area as well. You recently achieved a certification. It's not a designation from our industry, but it's a certification on the human side for personal growth. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, sure. And again, to be honest with you and your audience, just so they know where I'm coming from, I haven't figured out how I'm implementing all this yet.
A
so while I've
true
had
entrepreneur.
so while I've had conversations about longevity and health span versus lifespan with a number of clients, the first reaction I get is I don't want to live any longer. I don't want to be in a nursing home for more than I have to be if I ever have to be. So again, some of that's changing the conversation. So one of the things I did last year is I went and achieved the Prima Health certification or coaching certification, I guess you want to say that. And I've done nothing with it other than the education at this point. But I wanted to ensure that I had an excellent background as I started to dive a little bit deeper in this space officially and with clients if I chose to go that route, which I do plan to go. I am just not 100% sure how I'm getting there yet and exactly what the offering looks like and how I put this into practice. I love to speak. I love to teach. I love to coach. So I will definitely be figuring out how to maybe do that and perhaps in a group setting as well that makes the best use of everybody's time. And then, to the extent that coaching needs to happen one-on-one, we can do that.
When you mentioned health span versus lifespan, I immediately wrote it down, and you talked about retirement and longevity.
Yes.
And I just smiled because our new conference that we're launching in March of 2022 is the Retirement and Longevity Summit. So I'll do the shameless plug. And of course, as I told you previously, I immediately penciled you in for the agenda committee, said, this guy gets it. He's already got a wonderful tagline. He's getting certifications. He understands that just focusing on finances is never enough.
Sure.
And no, we don't really all understand how we're going to integrate this stuff, but we're entrepreneurs. We just know it's the way it could be and it's
Right.
the way it should be. So we're going to figure it out. And yes, it might be a little messy up front, but
Sure.
nothing new in that world, right?
Yes,
So I
definitely.
think it's great that you're focusing on that and being able to connect it together. And you're certainly seeing that out in the community, that people are now trying to focus more on wellness. And it's not just your objective, but your wife has a really cool business that relates to wellness as well. Could you talk about that?
Sure. So she is a 50% owner in a franchise called Osteostrong. So shameless plug, www.osteostrong.me, because it's a concept that's pretty difficult to understand. But we're a human performance center that focuses on something called skeletal system conditioning. Well, what is that? It's your bones, it's your muscles, it's your tendons and your ligaments. And one session, 10 minutes, one time a week, actually will trigger something called osteogenesis, which is the strengthening of the bone tissue, which then signals the strengthening of muscle, tendons, and ligaments. So if you start to read about wellness and what happens as we age, there's something that happens with women. It's called osteoporosis and osteopenia, a lot more than happens to men earlier in life, and that's because they go through hormonal changes early. But I think everybody understands from a male perspective is how many times do you hear about a 70 or 80-year-old male falling, breaking their hip, and then that's it. They really never recover from that. And unfortunately, it's not the reason they pass, but it really is the causation at the end of the day. So what we don't know as a general population, although every medical person knows this and every physical specialist knows this, and that is we start to lose 1% to 2% of our healthy bone tissue every year after 30. And the muscle just follows. We call, that's called sarcopenia, the loss of muscle tissue. But if we can stop or prevent that from happening or happen a lot less, then people will have a lot healthier lives as they age, regardless of what they necessarily do from a nutrition or a exercise or a stress and sleep standpoint, which are all additional critical elements to have that health span equal to their lifespan. So we're a clinical center that, again, 10 minutes, one time per week, that actually will increase or at least be beneficial to bone loss and muscle loss.
I found it fascinating. I went to the website, checked it out, and I love the idea of something that is simple and straightforward, because when you look at it, you get it. It's not complicated. You don't have to read a medical journal to figure it out. But one time a week for 10 minutes, it's like bumping up your 401k contribution by a
Right.
little bit. It's
Right.
just a little, but man,
Right.
over 20, 30, 40 years,
That's
it
right.
really pays off. So I liked it. Let's be a little more tactical. You do a lot of work with helping people prepare for retirement. You start maybe 5 to 10 years before retirement, trying to prep people, help them understand what's coming up. And I know you're big on time segmented returns. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And that's become a passion of mine too. And it's really the psychology of how an investor, by and large, thinks about their money. When all the money's in one account, they look at the account value, and that either rises or falls. Even if they're diversified and say have 60% in the stock market and 40% in bonds, they look at the value, and it tends to play tricks on their mind, right? So I look at the investment process in almost a life cycle perspective, and I talk about it four pieces: accumulation, transition, distribution, and transfer. Transfer being what you give to charity or to loved ones when you and your spouse are no longer here. So again, when you're accumulating money, regardless of the goal, the money can be in a bucket. It can be in one bucket because it's all for the future, and you don't need cash flows. So I think the problem that a lot of retirees have is they don't think about their time horizon in terms of their entire life. They think about their time horizon in terms of when they need to start taking money out. And really, they should be thinking of time horizon of the dollars that they need at what time. So I find that 5 to 10 years before that date begins, that we need to start training and teaching investors, soon to be retirees, to think about their money in at least two different buckets. One is what's going to provide cash flow for you initially and ongoing, and secondly, what's going to grow to fight inflation and create future cash flows into the future. So if I have enough time, or the situation presents itself, which it usually does, we can ensure that when a retiree goes to flip the switch and say, I now need to live on the money that I've saved, they have somewhere between 5 and 10 years and say laddered. I use bullet shares a lot, laddered bullet shares, right? They're easy to implement. They're laddered out. They're investment grade or better. And the psychology completely changes with the client. Time, security, and peace of mind in retirement is what we're shooting for. And we want to give them confidence and clarity that they're on track. Probability analyses are nice, but they don't deliver the mechanics of how we're going to provide the cash flow. And so we call it the income portfolio, but that bullet share mentality allows them to ride out equity ups and downs, and know that they're going to have exactly the cash flow that they need. And then the timing of maybe how we switch that around now becomes somewhat subjective, but we try to bring a lot of objectivity into that as well. We talked about that a little bit on our last call together. So again, at the end of the day, I've had some people tell me that that's inefficient from a portfolio perspective. I'm not sure I agree with that. I think the efficient portfolio sometimes is not what modern portfolio theory tells us. I think the efficient portfolio is something the client's going to stick to, that's going to allow them still to meet their goals. And what's fascinating is most of the time, clients are 50% in the market in retirement, 60% in the market in retirement, and they're okay with that. Whereas maybe 15 years ago, they'd have been, if we just use probability analysis, they'd be 30% in the market, because that's really all they need. But by partitioning those cash flows, we can teach them to take a little bit more risk with the dollars they should be taking more risk with, so that they can take care of the kids, the grandkids, the college education, and even the charities that they want to take care of. And they're free to do that without a lot of worry from a market volatility perspective.
I think it's a great way to help people think a little longer term. As financial planners, we see the life cycle, not just because we're trained to do that, but we talk to people on different stages of the life cycle on a regular basis. So that's just naturally where we live. People are going to be much more focused. And I've certainly noticed that, and you just brought it up, when people are thinking of retirement, they think of the event of when they start taking money out, right? They're talking about that moment in time. And they literally say, they've said it to me, who knows how many times, when I need to start taking money. They're not thinking, will this last for 20 years? That's another question. But when they ask the money, they want to know at that moment when I start taking money. So they're very event focused. Sounds like a great way to really lay it out and communicate some of the principles of investing money for longer term with shorter term and making sure your cash flows match up. And I'll tell you, I would have put up a good argument 10 or 20 years ago on portfolio optimization until I learned a lot more about people, and people aren't portfolios. So to do a people optimization and portfolio optimization, well, that's not exactly the same thing. There's going to be a blend in there. And we have to figure out what that is, because I don't think there's a manual that tells us exactly how that works. It's not a data fed calculation, but we're all working on it. So how about we pivot to the last question? It is the magic wand question. So tell me, Mario, if you could wave this magic wand and change anything in the world, pressure's on, what would you change?
You warned me about this, and I was hoping I could answer it both from a health and a wealth perspective. Would you allow me to answer it both ways?
You got the wand, brother. Have at it. Okay.
From a wealth perspective, and Secure Act 2.0 apparently has some of these provisions in it. Everybody should be part of a retirement plan. We should auto enroll, auto escalate, auto invest, require opt-outs, re-enroll every 3 years back to the defaults, as long as they're prudently selected and monitored. And that's the way we need to do it. We really should be in an opt-out system, not an opt-in system, and it should be 100%. So that's my wish on the financial side. On the health side, the focus needs to shift to preventive methods, not on treating the disease. We got to focus on what's causing the disease. I'm not a medical professional, but we're like, I'll give you an example with COVID. Where have we said that, if you're metabolically flexible, you focus on nutrition and you exercise regularly, or you're mobile, that you have less risk of hospitalization from COVID? We don't say that. We just talk about vaccine. We talk about masks, and again, very appropriate. But at the end of the day, we need to work on the healthiness of America, not so much on fixing the leaks that are happening every single day.
Mario, thanks so much for being on the show. Those are great answers.
Ross, thanks so much, man.
Thank you for listening to Outcomes. Subscribe now to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Advisor 2X. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service providers with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.
Shaping Change by Ross Marino and Susan Bradley.
Well, I've really lived the whole theme of the book. Any advisor will tell you they've seen clients go through this, where they have plans one day, you wake up the next day, and the plan is practically scrapped because now life happened and the plans need to change.
Get your copy of Shaping Change by visiting shapingchangebook.com.